March 18th, 2026. Your reader for this hour is Mary Gilmore. Our first article is Proposal to build 40 billion desalination plants aims to save Colorado River. A sign warns visitors not to walk on what would ordinarily be a floating dock on Lake Powell at Antelope Point Marina, but is instead hundreds of feet away from the water in this February image. Can nuclear power end the water crisis? In the middle of the desert sits a sign, "Caution, docks may be slippery." They are not. In fact, there's not a drop of water to be seen at Antelope Point Marina, which once sat near the shore of Lake Powell, the nation's second largest reservoir. The sparkling Colorado River now laps at the Glen Canyon walls about 180 feet below, completely invisible from a dock that once floated atop the water. Instead of reflecting the bright blue Arizona sky near the Four Corners region of the Southwest, the lake's water level reflects the dire reality that the Colorado River is running out of water, and the dock with the sign dangles off a 100-foot cliff, waiting for a refill that climatologists say will likely never come. Things are really, really rough on the Colorado River. It's ugly, said Eric Balkin, the executive director of the Glen Canyon Institute. Everybody is at a place right now where we're all asking, what the heck happens now? What are we doing? Now, a public lands access group has proposed an eye-popping, ambitious plan to build 8 massive desalination plants off the California coastline, turning ocean water into fresh water for farming and reducing demand on the ailing Colorado River. To meet the energy demand, the plants must have to be powered with nuclear reactors. Although desalination plants are widely used in the Middle East, they consume huge amounts of electricity to generate a relatively small amount of water. No country has ever tried something on this scale before. The Colorado River Basin and the 7 states that depend on the river for water is facing significant shortfalls this summer following an unusually hot and dry winter. The plan's author at the Idaho-based Blue Ribbon Coalition says their $40 billion proposal offers a viable, long-term solution at a time when President Donald Trump is slashing environmental-based regulatory delays and encouraging the country to think big. At some point, we're going to hit a hard reality. There's no more water in the Colorado River, said Ben Burr, the coalition's executive director. You can only squeeze so much more juice out of it. Some critics say the plan is both utterly unaffordable and potentially catastrophic for the environment. The Blue Ribbon Coalition is undeterred, deliberately invoking the massive federal efforts that built the Glen Canyon and Hoover dams and filled Lake Powell and Lake Mead with Colorado River water. Those reservoir projects allowed the United States to flourish in Arizona, Nevada, and California, supercharging economic growth, powering cities, and turning dusty desert into fertile farmland. The group's plan is the newest ambitious idea to solve Western water woes. Other proposals floated over the decades included towing icebergs from Alaska or Antarctica, diverting rivers from the rainy Pacific Northwest, or even piping Great Lakes water thousands of miles west across the Continental Divide. Peter Goebel, the assistant state climatologist for Colorado, said the ongoing drought is increasing pressure on western states to find a solution. The West is warming faster than the country overall, which ultimately means even less water available for farmers, businesses, and residents, he adds. There's no way to look at the numbers and think the Colorado River is doing well right now, Goebel said. In a world that's warmer, all signs point to droughts that will be more intense and more frequent. Drought squabbles among states threaten river's future. 7 states, Arizona, California, Colorado, Nevada, New Mexico, Utah, and Wyoming, collaboratively manage and use the Colorado River. But the amount of water flowing downstream has been dropping due to a long-term drought at the same time, causing squabbles among the states over who gets how much for farming, drinking, and industrial uses. And a certain amount of water must constantly flow out of the 2 dams so they can produce power for millions of households and businesses. Mexico and Native American tribes also have water use rights and have a say in the management. Although it's at the end of the river, California legally has the right to use more water than any of the other states, primarily to grow alfalfa to feed cattle. Although he has not endorsed this specific plan, California Governor Gavin Newsom, in a February 11th letter to fellow Colorado River governors, suggested that desalination and other advanced technologies may ultimately be necessary. Newsom's office did not respond to a request for comment specifically on the Blue Ribbon Plan. We welcome shared investments in infrastructure, from water reuse to desalination, that can reduce pressure on precious water supplies in Lake Powell and Lake Mead, Newsom wrote. Our reality is clear. We need to manage with less rain and snow to provide water for our communities and farms each year. It is a shared reality that requires a shared solution. Burr said the plants could generate 7 million acre-feet of water. An acre-foot of water, which is 325,850 gallons, is equivalent to about what 2 or 3 U.S. homes use annually. In comparison, growing a single acre of alfalfa consumes as much as 6 acre-feet of water each year, according to the University of Arizona's College of Agriculture and Life Sciences. What's in the $40 billion plan? Blue Ribbon Plan envisions 8 large desalination plants off the coast of California and Mexico, powered potentially by small nuclear generators of the kind championed by the White House. Electricity could also come from solar or wind farms, although Trump has repeatedly tried to kill such projects. Building the plants would cost about $40 billion, Burr estimated. The plants would potentially be built in the Sea of Cortez and in the federal enclaves on California's Pacific coast. Doing so would limit environmental roadblocks, speeding their construction. Desalination plants work by removing salt from ocean water, creating extra salty water that would have to be diluted before being dumped back into the ocean. Otherwise, it would be toxic to aquatic life. Fresh water would be pumped at least 100 miles inland to reach California's Imperial Valley, a vast desert that today is irrigated with Colorado River water to grow crops from alfalfa to lettuce and onions. The new water would allow California to give up some of its Colorado River allocations to other states to use. Burr said he believes the plan, which could be privately or publicly funded, is being offered at the right time. He said the pendulum against overregulation and environmentalism is swinging back in favor of ordinary Americans and business owners and against the environmental groups that would otherwise have prevented the construction of Lake Powell or Lake Mead. The Blue Ribbon Group supporters include companies that would benefit from increased water levels in Lake Powell and that have fought to maintain higher water levels. I think you're seeing that we're realizing as a country we have to be building real infrastructure and not just jobs programs for environmental lawyers, Burr said. We need a new, real water system. Throwing seawater at the problem, that's just crazy. Aaron Weiss, the deputy director of the Denver-based Center for Western Priorities, considers the Blue Ribbon Plan laughable. The center advocates for increased land and water conservation across the West, but is nonpartisan. Weiss said the infrastructure necessary to move fresh water from the coast back uphill for farmers would be staggeringly expensive, likely adding tens of billions of dollars to the overall cost. Their solution to the problem is throw seawater at it, and it's just crazy, Weiss said. No one has ever considered desalinating water on this scale. It's not audacious. It's just stupid. Just based on what we know that it costs to desalinate water and move water, there's no way $40 billion is anywhere close to the actual price tag. Among other countries, Israel depends heavily on desalination to meet its drinking and farm water needs, but that also consumes about 5% of the country's overall electricity, according to a study by Tel Aviv University. Weiss said there's also significant uncertainty on how the desalination plants would handle the extra salty water created by the process. Israel's plants mix that water back into the Mediterranean, where it's diluted enough not to endanger aquatic life. Like Burr, Weiss said that the low snowpack levels across the West this winter are putting pressure on states to find some kind of solution. During the Biden presidency, the federal government paid farmers billions of dollars to stop growing crops like alfalfa, freeing up water for other uses. That funding was temporary, however, and the Trump administration has been pushing states to find a longer-term solution. Federal forecasters are warning that this could be one of the worst years on record for Lake Powell water levels due to the poor snowpack and warm winter. As of mid-March, the lake's surface stood at 3,529 feet above sea level, down from 3,587 feet in 2024, its most recent high. Some forecasters worry the lake could lose so much water this year that it will reach what's known as power pool, the minimum level necessary to continue generating hydroelectricity. The lake reached its highest ever level of 3,708 feet above sea level in 1983 and has never been full since. A white bathtub ring remains visible from that high water mark. Forcing farmers to use less water could raise food costs for Americans, although some environmental groups say the solution is to grow less alfalfa, which is often sold to China, Japan, and Saudi Arabia for their herds, according to the University of California Agriculture and Natural Resources Service. Burr said it's silly to pay farmers not to grow crops. Wouldn't that money be better spent creating more water to use, he asked. Weiss, however, said conservation is the fastest, easiest way to reduce water use. He said the Blue Ribbon Plan would take decades to complete, and the Colorado River is in crisis now. At the end of the day, basic physics takes over, Weiss said. Our only solution is to conserve our way out of this aggressively. Balkin, who runs the Glen Canyon Institute, has been pushing a plan to completely remove the 710-foot-tall Glen Canyon Dam, or at least modify it so all the water in Lake Powell can flow downstream into Lake Mead. The Institute ultimately wants to see the Colorado River return to its natural state through the Glen Canyon. Given the low snow impact and given the heat wave that's about to zap the snowpack, we're probably looking at one of the worst runoffs in history, at one of the worst times. It's also certain we will see some sort of crash soon at Lake Powell, Balkin said. This may be unprecedented, but it is the most predictable disaster of all time. We have known this moment has been coming for 20 years. You are listening to a reading of today's issue of the USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 15 minutes after the hour. Trump facing a grim truth about war. Presidents have long found it can be a trap. A hard truth for presidents. It's easier to get into a war than to get out of it. Just ask Harry Truman about Korea, Lyndon Johnson about Vietnam, or George W. Bush about Iraq. Now Donald Trump about Iran. When Trump announced in a social media video February 28th that the United States and Israel were striking Iran, he vowed that their overwhelming military advantage would crush the Islamic Republic's navy, its missile capabilities, and its nuclear potential, perhaps even overturn the government itself, in a war he suggested might last 4 to 5 weeks. Now on week 3, the United States has destroyed much of Iran's armed forces and its stores of missiles. Its supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, has been killed. But the Ayatollah's son has taken his place, and Tehran has managed to essentially paralyze the crucial Strait of Hormuz with threats of mines and attacks from small boats. That has spiked the cost of energy around the world and across the United States, including at the gas pump. For Trump, that has made it both problematic to declare victory and increasingly costly to continue to fight. I think the president, frankly, is stuck, said State Department veteran Aaron David Miller on MS Now. All his options have downsides. He's not used to hearing no. For starters, Trump has found himself in an unaccustomed role of asking allies for help to send warships that could escort vessels through the Strait of Hormuz. That may be the clearest message yet that he now sees an extended campaign ahead, not one that the forces arrayed in the region can end within a few weeks. Also unaccustomed, many allies declined. Some noted that Trump launched the war without asking their advice or support. This is not our war, said Germany's defense minister Boris Pistorius. Prime Minister Keir Starmer said the United Kingdom would not be drawn into wider war. The European Union declined. Japan said it would consider the request. Their demurrals prompted a rebuke from an angry Trump. We don't need anybody, he told reporters at the White House on March 16th. We're the strongest nation in the world. Meanwhile, he rejected the idea that the United States has underestimated Iran's ability to flummox a more powerful enemy. I knew about the strait, that it could be a weapon, which I predicted a long time ago, he shrugged. He reiterated the importance of stopping, once and for all, Iran's nuclear ambitions. You can't let the most violent, vicious country in the last 50 years have a nuclear weapon because the Middle East will be gone. But he didn't explain how the United States could or would gain control of the uranium that Iran has processed nearly to bomb grade, now buried far underground near Isfahan. That could involve deploying special operations teams and ground troops, a perilous mission that would carry the risk of higher casualties and deeper complications. He has ordered an additional expeditionary force of 2,500 Marines to the Middle East. When a reporter on Air Force One asked Trump to explain the deployment, he replied, "Shh, you are a very obnoxious person," and called on another reporter for a question. Most Americans aren't persuaded that the initial strikes were a good idea or that the war will make the United States safer. In a Quinnipiac poll, March 6th through 8th, 53% of the voters opposed the U.S. strikes, and 3 of 4, 74%, were against sending ground troops. Nearly two-thirds, 62%, said the White House hadn't provided a clear explanation for a military action. The survey of 1,002 registered voters had a margin of error of plus or minus 3.8 percentage points. Only 1 in 5 predicted the war would last just days or weeks. More than 7 in 10 predicted it would last months or a year or even longer. What defines a presidency? Another lesson of history. Big wars tend to take over presidencies. LBJ is remembered more for the misadventure in Vietnam than he is for the Great Society legislation that created Medicare and Medicaid. George W. Bush's presidency is defined by 2 of America's longest wars, in Iraq and Afghanistan, which lasted longer than his tenure in office. During his second term, Trump has been focused on his legacy in adding his name to the U.S. Institute of Peace and the Kennedy Center, in campaigning for the Nobel Peace Prize in an argument he had settled wars from Armenia to Rwanda. In Iran, though, peace now seems very far away. Judge blocks parts of Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s vaccine policy. Ruling supports medical community's concerns. A Massachusetts federal judge blocked part of Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s reshaping of federal vaccine policy in a March 16th ruling. District Judge Brian Murphy ruled in favor of the American Academy of Pediatrics, along with other medical groups, which accused the Trump administration of acting unlawfully to carry out what they called Kennedy's agenda of upending immunization policies. Murphy wrote that for decades, the United States has focused on the eradication and reduction of diseases by using vaccines. He said that under Kennedy, the government has disregarded those methods and thereby undermined the integrity of its actions. The Trump administration's actions around vaccination have been admonished by major medical institutions and public health experts, with some warning that more Americans, including children, may die from preventable diseases as a result. Kennedy has said the vaccines will remain available to anybody who wants them, and supporters have praised what they say is a move toward a more individual rights-based approach to public health. The judge also blocked Kennedy's 13 appointees to a key vaccine advisory panel from continuing to serve in their positions ahead of a meeting scheduled from March 18th to March 19th. Kennedy has fired all 17 original members of the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, or ACIP, the committee of health experts that guides vaccine use for the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, replacing them with members whom critics have called unqualified. Some of the members, like Kennedy, have a history of anti-vaccine advocacy and involvement in anti-vaccine groups. HHS confirmed to the USA Today that the ACIP meeting has been postponed. Vaccine votes ruled invalid. Vaccine votes ruled invalid. Murphy said that because it was unlawfully constituted, the earlier panel's votes to downgrade recommendations for hepatitis B vaccines for newborns and COVID-19 shots broadly were also invalid. In May 2025, Kennedy announced that the COVID-19 vaccine would no longer be included in the CDC's recommended immunization schedule for healthy children and pregnant women, a move breaking with expert guidance. This drew the ire of American Academy of Pediatrics, which went as far as to release its own schedule in August 2025, saying the federal process was no longer credible. It is recommended that all children 6 months to 23 months old receive the latest COVID-19 vaccine to reduce the chance of serious illness. The children and adolescents ages 2 to 18, without other high-risk factors like immunosuppression, can receive and should be offered the vaccine if they are not immunized before, according to the guidance. In response, posted to social media, Kennedy hit back at the Pediatrics Academy's criticism, implying that the organization's views were influenced by corporate pharmaceutical funders. Kennedy has led several changes to the U.S. vaccine schedules and recommendations, including removing 4 from the children's list and splitting the MMR vaccine, a combination shot protecting against measles, mumps, and rubella, into 2 separate vaccines. Kennedy, with President Trump's backing, said cutting the number of vaccines aligns the United States with other developed nations. The updated recommendations for immunizations for the 11 diseases, including measles, mumps, and varicella, while categorizing others as either targeted for high-risk groups or subject to parents' discretion with their doctors, the HHS said. This is a significant victory for public health, evidence-based medicine, the rule of law, and the American people, Richard Hughes, a lawyer for the medical groups, said in a statement. The government may appeal this decision, and we have more work to do to achieve a full victory on the merits. But for now, we get to celebrate a rare bit of good news. Judge has issued other high-profile blocks. Murphy has earned the wrath of the Trump administration and the president for repeatedly blocking their initiatives, including core parts of Trump's hardline immigration policy. HHS looks forward to this judge's decision being overturned, just like his other attempts to keep the Trump administration from governing, HHS spokesman Andrew Nixon said in a statement to USA Today. In another case brought against the Trump administration, Murphy issued and enforced a court order to restrict the administration's efforts to deport migrants of other nationalities to countries such as South Sudan, Libya, and El Salvador. Trump derided Murphy as out of control, and White House advisor Stephen Miller called the judge a lunatic. At the administration's urging, the Supreme Court intervened twice in early stages of the case, lifting Murphy's injunction and clearing the way for the deportation of several men to South Sudan. Murphy ruled against the third country deportation policy again on February 25th in a final ruling. A federal appeals court paused that order while the government pursues its appeal on the same day as Murphy's ruling against Kennedy. The administration has said it is prepared to take the case to the Supreme Court again. The judge has also issued rulings against the Pentagon on research funding, temporary deportation protections covering more than 5,000 Ethiopians, and allowed offshore wind projects to continue over the administration's objections. Top U.S. spy official quits, he says Trump was duped. The head of the National Counterterrorism Center resigned in protest over the war in Iran as Israel announced it had killed Tehran's top intelligence official in a blow to the regime as it continued to defy President Donald Trump. Joe Kent, a conservative politician and decorated former Army Ranger and CIA paramilitary officer, was a top aide to the National Intelligence Director, Tulsi Gabbard. In a post March 17th on the social media platform X, he said that after much reflection, I have decided to resign from my position as director of the National Counterterrorism Center effective today. Iran posed no imminent threat to our nation, and it is clear that we started this war due to pressure from Israel and its powerful American lobby, Kent wrote in a letter to Trump, who nominated him for the top U.S. counterterrorism job on February 3, 2025. He added that Trump had been duped by the misinformation campaign. Kent is the first U.S. official to resign over the war. The White House has no immediate comment. Also on March 17th, Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz said an overnight strike in Iran had killed Ali Larijani, head of Iran's Supreme National Security Council and the country's top intelligence official. There was no immediate comment from Iran on the Israeli assertion or a separate confirmation from the United States. The Israeli military said it also had killed Gholam Mezria Salamani, head of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, Bassi paramilitary unit, and his deputy, Saeed Karashi. Strait of Hormuz is open only to Iran and its allies, Tehran said. Iran and its allies have been moving oil through the Strait of Hormuz in defiance of Trump's wishes to open the major petroleum artery up to the United States. Iranian military forces have brought oil shipments through the vital waterway off the Iranian coast, through which about 20% of the world's oil passes, to be near a halt since the start of the war. But some ships have been allowed to pass through, according to U.S. officials, experts, and news reports. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent told CNBC on March 16th that Iranian fuel ships have been getting out already. We've let that happen to supply the rest of the world, Bessent said. He said that Indian fuel ships are also making it through the strait, and he believes Chinese ships are going through as well. The New York Times also reported Iran is allowing China to move oil through the region. According to the Financial Times, Iran's ability to continue shipping out oil while limiting global supply has been a financial windfall for the country. You're listening to a reading of today's issue of the USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 30 minutes after the hour. Auto industry sees warning lights. War and wild swings in oil market could slow auto sales. If history repeats itself, the U.S. auto industry could see a plunge in auto sales, in part due to the war in Iran, according to the data compiled by a Lansing-based economic consultancy. On February 28, the United States and Israel bombed Iran after President Donald Trump said Iran was building nuclear weapons that threatened U.S. allies and could soon reach the shores of the United States. Iran retaliated by attacking Israel and the Middle Eastern countries that host U.S. military bases. The war has led to a wild swing in the prices for crude oil from that part of the world, and consumers are feeling it at the pump. The average gasoline price hit about $3.60 per gallon as of March 12th, according to the AAA Motor Club. That compares to 1 month ago when the average price was $2.89. In fact, gasoline hasn't cost this much since 2024. What it means for the auto industry is a very real possibility that new car sales could sputter. In 6 past instances of oil crises, auto sales dropped more than 10% of average sales. 3 of those times, they plunged by 40% or more of average sales, according to the Anderson Economic Group. The group notes that it is impossible to predict what might ultimately happen as a result of the war in Iran. But the past episodes that involved wars and oil embargoes had significant effects on the U.S. auto sales. History shows that Americans cut back sharply on buying cars when the wars, invasions, and oil embargoes occur. Patrick Anderson, CEO of Anderson Economic Group, said in a statement, "While we don't know how long this war will last or what the effects will be, at least 6 times since the 1970s, an event such as this has caused a sharp drop in auto sales. Factors that could influence sales. That said, there are some key differences in how vehicles are made and used today that could shield the auto industry from a sales plunge compared with how the cars were made and how consumers used them during the crises of the 1970s and the 1990s," Anderson said. "For one thing, vehicles are a lot more reliable and fuel efficient than they were decades ago. Second, a lot of people work from home at least part of the work week," Anderson said, reducing their need for as much gasoline as in the past. Third, the U.S. is now energy sufficient overall. All these factors reduce, but do not eliminate, the United States' vulnerability to oil supply shocks. Finally, about 1% of the active fleet today is electric vehicles. giving consumers that option as well as merely holding on to their existing cars longer, he said. Still, as 2 tankers were on fire in the Iraqi port on March 12th, after being hit by suspected Iranian explosive-laden boats, according to Rutgers, Anderson said, "We may be testing this auto sales vulnerability very soon." Driverless cars are coming to Uber through Amazon's ZooX. Your next Uber driver could be the car itself. Autonomous vehicle technology is no longer science fiction. In fact, cars that drive themselves are already on American roads, shuttling passengers to and from destinations. The largest global rideshare company, Uber, is making a huge bet on the future of autonomous vehicle transportation. Here's how the partnership could change ride-sharing in the future. Uber partners with Amazon's autonomous vehicle company. On March 11th, ZooX and Uber Technologies Incorporated announced a strategic partnership to deploy ZooX purpose-built robotaxis on Uber, says an Uber investor news release. ZooX is a technology company owned by Amazon that develops driverless vehicles. These vehicles already are active in areas of Las Vegas and San Francisco. The strategic partnership between the 2 brands will launch in Las Vegas and Los Angeles in mid-2027. Rideshare users will be able to use ZooX robotaxis for eligible rides via the Uber app. These autonomous vehicles are built specifically for ride-hailing and designed for comfort, conversation, and connection with friends and family, according to the press release. The partnership can help popularize ZooX autonomous vehicles and allow Uber to keep up with rapidly evolving technology without having to create its own autonomous vehicle from scratch. What does this mean for Uber drivers and rideshare passengers? The future of ride-sharing could be autonomous. In the year 2030, autonomous ride-sharing is projected to constitute approximately 10% of total rides, according to a 2026 Autonomous Vehicle Impact Report prepared by data analytics company Gridwise Analytics. Autonomous vehicles could account for a whopping 25% by 2035. If projections from Gridwise Analytics are accurate, hundreds of thousands of rideshare vehicles will be autonomous in less than 1 decade. This equates to fewer opportunities for drivers who make a living as independent contractors for Uber. On the positive side, Uber's decision to incorporate autonomous vehicles into its fleet could create several new job categories related to maintenance, service, and operation. Potential new categories include charging, customer support, and remote vehicle monitoring. Hybrid rideshare fleets are more likely in the decade to come. It's no secret that the autonomous vehicle space is growing between companies such as Google's Waymo, Tesla's Robotaxi, and Amazon's subsidiary ZooX. Despite serious growth and investment in autonomous vehicle technology, drivers aren't completely replaceable based on mishaps and recorded incidents. Autonomous vehicles may have gained millions of miles in cumulative driving experience in recent years, but some still lack the discernment of an average driver in certain scenarios. Additionally, software bugs aren't impossible, and the technology isn't infallible. Data from Gridwise Analytics projects that even a decade from now, human drivers will still have a place in the rideshare business, though new roles will be created and evolve over time. Your next Uber driver could be an autonomous vehicle, but only if you trust the technology and to decide to give it a try. Rising gas costs make used EVs appealing. Average price in the United States about $29,000, site says. Drivers who are looking for deals amid rising new car and gas prices are increasingly turning to electric vehicles. The average price of a used EV in the United States is about $28,000 to $29,000, according to Recharge.com, while the average used gas car price was over $29,099, according to Cars.com. The findings come as a number of used electric cars is on the rise, as leases that were popular in the early 2020s when the federal government offered tax credits are being returned to dealerships. Used electronic vehicle sales in January reached 31,503 units, which is 21.2% higher than last January and also up 20.8% from December 2025, according to a report from Cox Automotive. With that in mind, the USA Today Cars team took a look at why used EVs might be a good deal for some car buyers who are concerned about rising gas prices. Drivers of used electronic vehicles could save thousands on gas. A driver who opts for a new or used electronic vehicle could save $2,200 annually on gas, according to the U.S. Department of Energy. Even hybrid drivers can save $1,500 on gas annually, according to the agency. Researchers found that no matter where you live in the country, you will save driving an electric vehicle, the agency said. Plug-in hybrid electric vehicles save drivers in over 99% of U.S. zip codes. The Energy Department said the largest savings were found in areas with high gasoline prices, low electricity prices, and where drivers drove longer distances and used older, less fuel-efficient vehicles. Used electronic vehicles could save on maintenance costs. Owners of electric models saved an average of about $8,811 on ownership and maintenance compared to the best-selling traditional cars in their cases, over the length of time it takes them to drive the car 200,000 miles, according to Consumer Reports. The group said that used electronic vehicle drivers can save even more, even with slightly higher depreciation rates than gas-powered vehicles. The internal combustion engine vehicles that use savings partially offset by higher expected repair and maintenance costs for older vehicles, and the need to continue to pay for fuel, which makes up a large fraction of the total lifetime ownership costs for ICE vehicles, Consumer Reports said. Electronic vehicles significantly reduces these costs, while their biggest drawback, higher purchase prices, is partially offset by depreciation. Electronic vehicles have historically depreciated faster than gas-powered cars, but the gap is narrowing as the used electronic vehicle market expands. Electronic vehicles typically lose around 58% to 60% of their value over 5 years, compared to a typical depreciation rate in the low 40% to high 40% for gas cars over the 5 years. How long will it take drivers to consider switching to electronic vehicles? Stephanie Valdez-Streety, Koch's Automotive Director of Industry Insights, said it might take drivers a long time to consider making the switch to realize the savings, even as gas prices remain elevated. While higher gas prices do tend to refocus shoppers on fuel economy, the near-term impact is more likely to show up in household behaviors than in vehicle purchase behavior, with a few trips and cutbacks elsewhere, she said. To materially change buying behavior and drive a trend towards smaller, more efficient vehicles, Consumers would need to believe that gas prices will remain elevated for years, not just months. Valdez Streety and drivers said drivers might be more likely to consider hybrids over fully electronic vehicles because the transition is generally easier, as they don't have to be charged unless they are a plug-in version. If you look at the growth in hybrids, if you look in one of those areas where gas is expensive, like California or Florida, you might consider it because there are so many options now, said Valdez Streety. You're listening to a reading of today's issue of the USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 45 minutes past the hour. J.D. Power study finds Volkswagen as least reliable, brand more problematic than several others. Reliability is a huge factor when it comes to buying a car for many people. An unreliable vehicle can mean costly trips to the repair shop and accidents on the road. There are plenty of popular automakers that produce reliable cars, trucks, and SUVs, but some companies come up short when it comes to dependability. J.D. Power says the most unreliable car brand is German. Here's what drivers need to know. What is the least reliable brand for 2026? J.D. Power conducted a 2026 U.S. vehicle dependability study to determine which car brands have the most problems per 100 vehicles. As owners hold on to their vehicles longer, the long-term ownership experience matters more than ever, said Jason Norton, director of the auto benchmarking at J.D. Power. The vehicle dependability study is designed to provide automakers and suppliers with an understanding of the specific factors impacting owner satisfaction with long-term vehicle quality by identifying the problems experienced by original owners of a 3-year-old vehicle. The study found Volkswagen has the most problems per 100 vehicles. The brand was more problematic for owners with several other car brands, including Volvo, Land Rover, Jeep, Audi, Mercedes-Benz, and more. Lexus, Buick, and Mini had the most problems per 100 vehicles based on the study's results. Is Volkswagen a reliable car brand? Consumer Reports ranks Volkswagen 16th out of 26 automakers for new car reliability. Rivian produces the least reliable new cars, according to Consumer Reports. Volkswagen typically lags behind car brands such as Honda, Toyota, Hyundai, and Ford in overall reliability and durability, says automotive research site Car Gurus. The German automaker may not be the least reliable car brand consistently, but it isn't in the top 5 or top 10 most reliable car brands based on research, ranking, and review sites. Should you get a Volkswagen in 2026? Volkswagen produces several attractive offerings across its portfolio in several competitive segments. The Volkswagen Golf GTI Performance Hatchback, $34,590, is Motor Trend's 2026 Car of the Year. It comes with a turbocharged engine, handles well, and has plenty of cargo space. The German automaker also produces affordable SUV models such as the subcompact Taos, starting at $26,500. The Tao is often praised by reviewers for its inferior design and styling. For its interior design and styling. So it's praised for its interior design and styling. Volkswagen Tiguan is one of its best-selling SUVs. It starts at $30,805 and has plenty of cabin space. The SUV also feels premium despite its affordable starting price and comes in upper trims that offer better tech and more creative and creature comforts. How to search for reliable new and used cars. Searching for a reliable new or used vehicle depends on the car buyer, but using a reliable car brand's portfolio as a starting point, then refining your search based on how you live is a good method for use. For example, if you're in the market for a new vehicle, Chevrolet is one of the most reliable mainstream car brands based on J.D. Power's Vehicle Dependability Study. Chevy produces trucks and SUVs of different sizes depending on your needs. Once you pick a car model you like from a reliable brand, you can research the nameplate on a database like carcomplaints.com to see what problems owners may encounter. There's no surefire way to completely avoid car problems, but choosing a reliable car brand and a vehicle known for dependability may save you from repair headaches down the line. Palisade sales stop after a child's death. Hyundai planning recall as incident under probe. Hyundai has issued a stop sale and is planning a recall of over 60,000 of its Palisade SUVs following a fatal incident that is currently under investigation, a company news release says. The Palisade is a popular mid-size family SUV model and close relative to the Kia Telluride. It's the South Korean automaker's largest SUV and one of its few three-row models. Hyundai Palisade has been getting plenty of attention from vehicle reviewers and fans of the brand after its 2026 model year redesign. Why is it being recalled, and what should Palisade owners do to avoid incidents? Why is Hyundai recalling the Palisade? Hyundai is recalling the Palisade because in certain situations, the second and third row power seats may not detect contact with an occupant or object as intended, according to Hyundai release regarding the issue. Power-operated second and third row seats experiencing this detection issue could continue to fold whether or not a person or object is occupying the row of seats. The tragic death of a 2-year-old girl in Ohio on March 7th is under investigation in relation to the Palisade, according to the company's stop sale notice. While Hyundai does not yet have the full details and the incident is still under investigation, a young child lost her life. Hyundai extends its deepest sympathies to her family, a company statement said. Which Hyundai Palisade models are being recalled? One model year and 2 trims have been recalled. 2026 Hyundai Palisade Limited, 2026 Hyundai Palisade Calligraphy, and these upper trims come standard with the power folding third row seats. Hyundai Motor North America issued a stop sale of 2026 Palisade Limited and Palisade Calligraphy models in the United States and Canada. What should you do if your Hyundai Palisade is recalled? Hyundai urges owners to use caution when operating the second and third row power seat function and to ensure that no person or object, including children, is in the seat or seat folding area before operating the power seat, the company said in a statement. If you own a 2026 Hyundai Palisade Limited or Palisade Calligraphy, avoid pressing the seat back button during entry or exit, Hyundai advised. The safest course of action, if you must use second and third row power folding features, is to only use them when the vehicle is completely empty. This will allow owners to adjust their seating or cargo space to their needs without risking injury to passengers. Owners who are aware of this recall should take extreme caution using these features before a fix is issued and implemented. What is Hyundai doing to address the power folding seat issue? Hyundai is submitting finalized recall details to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. A recall repair is currently under development, and Hyundai will offer rental vehicles to customers until a full remedy is available. An over-the-air software update is also being developed that will enhance the system's response to contact with occupants or objects. This update will be available by the end of March, according to Hyundai. While it may not solve the recall, it will help avoid tragedies until all impacted vehicles are repaired. Owners can contact Hyundai's Consumer Assistance Center for questions regarding the recall. On the back page, there is the highlights of all 50 states. And I'm looking, and it says New York, Albany. Rural emergency medical service agencies across New York are in need of funding and systematic changes to continue helping to save lives. A report about the state's EMS system reveals. So that is it for our state, and they have quite a bit on Massachusetts. It says Westport. The market for custom-built homes is dwindling, says Jeff Cabral, the site coordinator for the Dynam Regional Technical Vocational High School Home Building Program. The rising cost of building materials, matched with more robust energy-efficient code requirements and a growing demand for all-electric homes, have made home building, in a word, complex, said Cabral. But the Diamond students whose vocational study of carpentry, metal fabrication, electrical, HVAC, and plumbing at work in and outside of the 19,000 square foot home in Westport call this annual project fun. Diamond students have had a hand in the construction every week since the start of the school year in September. So they build homes, and I know they have a program like that in Buffalo, so that's pretty exciting. You're listening to a reading of articles and features from the USA Today for Wednesday, March 18th, 2026, on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We'll return for more readings after this short break. Your reader for this hour has been Mary Gilmore. Thank you.
You're listening to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. As of this year, our agency has broadcast more than 300,000 hours of radio readings. Volunteer radio readers read newspapers, magazines, and books to area people who are blind or have a print disability, who are provided reading radios. Radio Reading's broadcast signal is provided at no charge by WNED. Radio Reading broadcasts from studios at 1199 Harlem Road in suburban Buffalo. Please let others know about Radio Reading. It's your service. For more information on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, call 716-821-5555.
We'll continue now with our reading of articles from today's issue of the USA Today. Your reader for this hour is Nancy. March Madness, sorting out the men's pretenders/contenders. It's bracket season in America as millions of people are making their picks for the 2026 NCAA tournaments, hoping they draw up the perfect field en route to selecting the eventual national champion. Whether you've been following hoops all season or just participating for fun, we know how difficult it is to draw up a successful bracket. So we're here to help. Ahead of First Four play March 17th, we broke down all 68 teams into tiers, from one and done to those with a real shot of making it to the Final Four. Just happy to be here. Prairie View A&M, Lehigh, UMBC, Howard, Long Island, Siena, Queens, Furman, Idaho, Tennessee State, Kennesaw State, California Baptist. For some programs, making the NCAA tournament is the ultimate dream. Then it comes and getting a number 13, 14, 15, and 16 pits them against real heavyweights. The odds of winning a game are so slim, and there's a good chance the game is a blowout. However, it doesn't ruin the fact these squads earn the right to be in. There is a chance these teams pull off the major upsets, with 2 number 16 seeds and 11 number 15s winning in the first round, but it doesn't seem likely. Upset contenders: Wright State, Penn, North Dakota State, Hawaii, Troy, Hofstra, High Point, Northern Iowa, SMU, Texas, NC State. If your bracket gets busted, a good chance one of these teams is responsible. Since the tournament expanded in 1985, there's been at least one upset yearly from a team seeded at least 5 seed lines worse than their foe. On average, at least 4 in the first round. Cinderella run to Sweet 16. Akron, McNeese State, South Florida, VCU, Miami of Ohio, Santa Clara. Someone grabbed glass slippers with these double-digit seeds capable of winning not just 1, but 2 games in the first weekend. It's almost a guarantee for it to happen, as a double-digit seed has advanced to the Sweet 16 in 38 of the last 40 tournaments. They may not make it to the Final Four, but they'll get to be the national darling for a full week. Spoilers: Texas A&M, Missouri, UCF, Iowa, St. Louis, TCU, Georgia, Ohio State, Villanova, Clemson, St. Mary's, Kentucky, Louisville. You may have the top seeds on the path to the Final Four. This group is capable of wrecking that. What's always intriguing about the teams seeded 6 to 10 is they have proved they can knock down heavyweights. They just weren't able to do it on a consistent basis. All it takes is for these teams to get hot at the right time to provide some major upsets. These are the squads that can really mess up your bracket by taking out Final Four picks. Can make major run: Utah State, UCLA, Miami, Florida, BYU, North Carolina, Tennessee, Alabama. On paper, these teams have difficult paths towards deep tournament runs, but it's more than possible for these higher-seeded teams. Do not sleep on the capabilities of these squads. Utah State, UCLA, Miami, and BYU ended their season in strong fashion and can carry the momentum into the tournament. While North Carolina, Tennessee, and Alabama are first-round upset candidates, they can easily shake them off to propel them toward a streak. Don't be too shocked if a Final Four is in their sights. Final Four is possible. Wisconsin, Texas Tech, Vanderbilt, Arkansas, Kansas, Nebraska, Virginia, Gonzaga. Every team wants to reach Indianapolis, but it's not a realistic path for everyone. These ones are capable of reaching it. They've proven contenders that did very well in the regular season and in conference tournaments, putting confidence in them winning the 4 games necessary to reach the semifinals. There may be one major concern with each of them, but they can easily make it non-existent. Final 4 or bust. St. John's, Illinois, Michigan State, Purdue, Houston. The Final 4 and a national championship has been the goal all season. Now they are positioned to fulfill the dream. They aren't exactly the top favorites, but these teams have all the right pieces to win it all. They have the right look and have proved they can beat elite teams, with the clutch factor needed to win those close battles. If you are wary of picking number 1 seeds to win it all, these are great candidates. National championship or bust. Iowa State, UConn, Florida, Michigan, Arizona, Duke. The ultimate heavyweights. From the start of the season until now, they've shown they can win it all. Now it's time to actually do it. This elite tier has separated themselves from the rest of the pack, playing an unreal brand of basketball that has mostly dominated every team in their way. They're the clear favorites and destined to be in the Final 4. When you have the right pieces for a championship, winning it all is the only way to declare it a successful season. Falling short would be a major disappointment. Being a championship favorite is a heavy burden, but these 6 teams can handle the pressure. When it's time to cut down the nets inside Lucas Oil Stadium on April 6th, these ones have a great chance to be the lucky ones holding the scissors. Beware, West Virginia women in bracket. March Madness is known for bracket busters and Cinderella runs, but upsets are rare in the women's NCAA tournament, and surprises have been few and far between. That could change this year. The lowest seed to win a national championship in the tournament's 44-year history has been a number 3 seed, and it has only happened 3 times. Most recently, the LSU Tigers in 2023. But as parity increases, several teams could be on upset watch. Think of when number 16 seed Harvard upset number 1 seed Stanford in the first round in 1998. Here are 5 bold predictions that could rock your bracket as the women's NCAA tournament gets underway on March 18th with the first 4. Tennessee eliminates NC State. Tennessee's streak of never missing an NCAA tournament was in danger after the team's last season slump when it lost 10 of its last 12 games. Tennessee enters the tournament on a 7-game losing streak, and team morale appears to be at an all-time low. But look for the Lady Volunteers to correct course against number 7 NC State in the first round. Tennessee narrowly lost to NC State 80-77 to open the season in November, but it won't end its season how it started. Senior Jana Barker and junior Malaysia Cooper have experience on their side, and the duo will lead the last Volunteers to their first win in more than a month. Rhode Island upsets Alabama. I wouldn't want to be Rhode Island's opponent in the first round, South Carolina head coach Dawn Staley said March 15th during a conversation with Rhode Island's head coach Tammy Rice, her former backcourt partner at Virginia. Rhode Island might be a mid-major conference making its first appearance since 1996, but the Rams have come to play. Rhode Island compiled a program record 28 wins this season, and the team is looking for the program's first women's NCAA tournament win. Look for Rams senior guard Brooklyn Gray to lead the way. We're not going to show that we are just happy to be on the stage. We're going to enjoy it, and we're going to win, Reese said. Alabama is coming off an SEC tournament quarterfinal loss to Texas, during which no Crimson Tide player reached double digits in scoring. Notre Dame ousts Ohio State in second round. Notre Dame junior guard Hannah Hidalgo is a walking highlight reel. The two-time ACC player and Defensive Player of the Year, Hidalgo paced the nation in steals per game, 5.4, and her 25.2 points per game ranks third overall. She has been sensational this season, but Notre Dame hasn't reached its typical regular season success due to the team's lack of depth. Senior Cassandra Prosper, however, will step up and have a big game in her final March Madness run. Ohio State sophomore guard Jeloni Cambridge upped her points per game from 15.4 last season to 22.8 in a breakout campaign. But the Buckeyes will make their third consecutive second-round exit. TCU outlasts Iowa in Sweet 16. TCU is coming into March Madness extra motivated after dropping the Big 12 tournament final to West Virginia, and the duo of Olivia Miles and Marta Suarez will lift the Horned Frogs to the Elite Eight for the second consecutive season. Iowa suffered a 96-45 loss to UCLA in the Big Ten final, the kind of lopsided results that can rattle your confidence ahead of the NCAA tournament. Iowa senior forward Hannah Stulecki has been dealing with shoulder injury, and her health will be paramount for the Hawkeyes. Stulecki was held scoreless in 25 minutes of play in the Big Ten final. West Virginia defeats Texas in Sweet 16. This is the boldest of my predictions. If West Virginia makes it past Kentucky in the second round, they could clash with Texas. West Virginia's brand of basketball is very disruptive, which could be a problem for Madison Booker and Rory Harmon. The Mountaineers make points hard to come by for their opponents with constant pressure and full court presses. West Virginia upset TCU in the Big Ten-12 tournament final behind a 21-point performance by Jordan Harrison, and earned the right to host the first two rounds of the NCAA tournament for the first time since 1992. The Mountaineers have a heart and chip on their shoulder, which makes them extremely dangerous. Fairfield Gonzaga could become Cinderellas. Upsets happen in the women's NCAA tournament much less often than they do in the men's. A double-digit seed has never made the women's Final Four, and the sport doesn't really have a true iconic Cinderella story to lean on like the men have with 2006 George Mason, 2011 VCU, or 2018 Loyola Chicago. But upsets do happen. Long before UMBC became the first number 16 seed to beat a number 1 seed in the men's tournament, it happened on the women's side in 1998 when Harvard, led by UConn star Sarah Strong's mom, Allison Feaster, upset Stanford. Even more recently, the 2023 tournament saw two number 1 seeds lose on their home floor in the second round. Number 8, Ole Miss, defeated Stanford, and number 9, Miami, Florida, took down Indiana on their way to a magical run to the Elite Eight for the first time in program history. That same season, South Dakota State beat Southern Cal in the first round. Toledo defeated Iowa State, and Princeton upset NC State. Last season's tournament featured a Richmond win over Georgia Tech and a win for South Dakota State over Oklahoma State. At the mid-major level, Carl Smesko built a team at Florida Gulf Coast that regularly upset teams in the NCAA tournament before he left for the WNBA's Atlanta Dream. The Eagles won their first round game over a Power 4 opponent 4 times between 2015 and 2023. So, brackets still get busted in the women's tournament. Here are 5 teams to consider when looking at potential upsets this year. Fairfield. The Stags are in their 3rd consecutive NCAA tournament under 4-year coach Carly Thibault-Dudanis. Each year they have climbed up 1 seed spot and are slotted at number 11 this season, taking on number 6 Notre Dame in Columbus, Ohio. Fairfield is powered on the court by the duo of Katie Lamoureau and Megan Anderson, who both average north of 16 points per game. For Fairfield, the key number is 11.4. That's how many three-pointers in the Stags make per game this season, which leads the nation. The Stags also rank 4th in effective field goal percentage with the 55% mark and 19th in points per 100 possessions. While Notre Dame is powered by 2-time ACC Player of the Year Hannah Hidalgo, the Irish aren't all that good at defending shooters. They rank 296th in the field goal defense, 198th in three-point defense, and 272nd in effective field goal defense. The Irish are 6 and 7 this season when an opponent makes at least 6 3-pointers. Iowa State. What version of Iowa State is going to show up in the NCAA tournament? The one that defeated Iowa in December and then won at Texas Tech by double digits, or the one that lost to Cincinnati and BYU? When the Cyclones are both healthy and playing their best basketball, they look like a team that can beat anyone. Audi Crooks has looked unstoppable in the paint at times this season. Jada Williams has proved to be a sharp three-point shooter, and Addie Brown is a versatile player and sharp passer who complements both. If Iowa State is playing up to its full potential, there's a possibility it could give UConn a scare in the second round. And don't we all want to see Crooks versus Sarah Strong? If the Cyclones are off, they could get blown out by Syracuse in the first round. Gonzaga. Minnesota needs to be wary of both teams on the other side of its opening weekend pod. Ole Miss is an uber-athletic team that won some tough games in the SEC this season and has a resume that features a pair of wins over Vanderbilt. But first, Ole Miss has to get past Gonzaga. No stranger to March Madness success. The Bulldogs have been to the Sweet 16 twice since Lisa Fortier took over from Kelly Graves in 2014. This season, Gonzaga ranks 2nd nationally in three-point shooting, making attempts from behind the arc at a 39% clip. The Zags are also 3rd nationally in total rebounding rate at 57.8%. Typically strong, shooting plus good rebounding equals success. Gonzaga is also armed with 3 players everyone should know. Allie Turner is the nation's 3rd best three-point shooter with a 46.7% success rate from behind the arc. Lauren Whittier, a freshman, is the only player in the nation who averages at least 19 points and 10 rebounds per game, while shooting better than 50% from the floor and 80% from the free throw line. And Inez Betancourt is a UConn transfer who has proved to be a versatile contributor for the Bulldogs. Oklahoma State. The Cowgirls have been inconsistent as they have lost to teams like St. John's and Kansas State, but swept Iowa State and notched wins over Texas Tech and Colorado. Still, J.C. Hoyt has one of the deepest benches in the country, which with 5 players who average double digits in scoring, and a 6th, Amari Wittig, who averages 9.9 points per game. Oklahoma State also has 5 players shooting better than 30% from a three-point land. Oklahoma State's defense has been questionable at times, but the Cowgirls do a great job at keeping their opponents from grabbing their own misses, ranking 4th nationally in offensive rebounds allowed per game with 7.9. The Cowgirls rank in the top 30 nationally in most shooting metrics and have scored at least 80 points 16 times this season and are undefeated when doing so. If the Cowgirls' offense is clicking, they could cause Princeton and UCLA some real problems. Western Illinois. This is a case where one player has the potential to wreck an entire bracket. Mia Nicastro is a 6'2" senior guard for the Leathernecks and the Ohio Valley Conference Player of the Year. She is 4th in the nation in scoring with 24.2 points per game, and also ranks 12th nationally in defensive rebounds per game with 8.8. She's near 50-40-90 player, shooting 52.2% from the floor, 38.8% from three-point land, and 89.5% from the free throw line. The native of St. Charles, Missouri, also ranks 5th nationally in wins, shares, and 7th in PER. Nicastro has topped 30 points in 6 games this season. She's proved she can fill up the stat sheet against major conference opponents too, scoring 20 points against Iowa earlier this season. She will be at the top of the scouting report for North Carolina in the first round. Race to finish line for NBA playoffs heats up. It's the final month of the NBA regular season. This means teams are running out of chances to make their final arguments for playoff seeding, just like players are running out of time to convince voters to select them for individual awards. It also means the best basketball of the year is in front of us, as the 2-month marathon that is the NBA playoff gets underway April 18th. But before we get ahead of ourselves, this should make for a compelling finish to what has been an interesting season. The top 5 storylines to watch. Number 1, can anyone catch the Pistons and Thunder? Since the start of the season, the Oklahoma City Thunder have led the Western Conference wire to wire, even in the face of significant time lost due to injury. In the Eastern Conference, the Detroit Pistons took over sole possession of first on November 7th and haven't looked back since. Being practical, only 2 teams in the East, the Boston Celtics, 3.5 games back, and the New York Knicks, 5, can potentially catch Detroit. And while it doesn't help that Detroit has the 22nd toughest remaining schedule, .485 per Tankathon.com, and that the Pistons don't play Boston or New York for the rest of the way, Detroit has been more vulnerable recently, losing 6 of its last 12 games. The case is perhaps stronger for the San Antonio Spurs, who are 3 games back of Oklahoma City. San Antonio has the NBA's 4th easiest remaining schedule, while the Thunder have the league's 11th toughest. And while the Thunder are playing extremely well and should get Jalen Williams back soon, the Spurs have been the hottest team in basketball, losing just 2 of their last 20 games. Will the 65-game rule disqualify any stars in the awards races? Injuries early in the season to some of the biggest stars have complicated the pathway for individual awards. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, 12 games missed, appears to be safe with the ability to miss up to 5 games while maintaining eligibility. He has been consistent and appears to be the odds-on favorite to win his 2nd consecutive MVP. Nikola Jovic, 16, can miss only one more game, and as the only player averaging a triple-double, he has a very compelling case for MVP. Victor Wembanyama, 15, can sit out no more than 2 of San Antonio's games. The overwhelming favorite for Defensive Player of the Year, he has an outside shot at MVP consideration. In the East, avoiding the play-in, heading into action March 17th, just 1.5 games separated the number 9 seed in the East from the number 5 seed, and since the top 6 teams in the conference claim automatic playoff bids, the battle to stay out of the play-in picture should intensify as the season wears on. Teams headed in the right direction include the Orlando Magic, 38-9, winners of 7 of their last 8, Miami Heat, 38-30, winners of 10 of their last 13, and the Atlanta Hawks, 37-31, winners of 10 consecutive. Teams headed in the wrong direction include the Toronto Raptors, 38-29, losers of 6 of their last 10, and the Philadelphia 76ers, 37-31, losers of 9 of their last 16. Injuries to Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid obviously don't help Philadelphia either. Who will tank hardest? The picture at the bottom of the standings looks altogether different. It has become clear, whether through shutting players down or through unconventional player rotations, that certain teams are doing all they can to improve their positioning in the 2026 draft. This is particularly magnified for teams whose picks carry protections, like the Indiana Pacers. Indiana's first-round selection is top 4 and 10-30 protected, which means that if the lottery places in the Pacers 15-53, worst record in NBA, in any slot number 5 through 9, that pick will convey to the Los Angeles Clippers. The same goes for the top 8 protected pick belonging to the Washington Wizards, 16-51, second worst record. Teams have become creative with injury reports and are relying on maintenance surgeries to shut players down. With a very deep draft class that has elite star talent at the top, look for tanking to become very more pronounced. Will the NBA and its officials ease up on enforcement of foul baiting calls? From Celtic star Jaylen Brown calling out players who intentionally seek contact to bait officials into making calls, to scores of fans complaining about the tactic on social media, will the NBA listen to appeals to change the way it officiates games? Interestingly, the average number of personal fouls per game this season, 19.9, is well off of the record mark for modern era, 26.2 in 1981-82, though it is a modest increase from last year's total of 18.6. Yet, somehow the problem feels as worse as it has ever been. Physicality and intensity always ramp up late in the regular season and postseason, and the NBA needs to determine whether its current strategy is viable. Certain players, Gilgeous Alexander, Jalen Brunson, Jokic Luka Doncic, among them, resort to the maneuver when faced with tight defense. Frankly speaking, it's a cop-out. Granted, they typically are taking advantage of overzealous defenders, but it also leads to a disjointed and often frustrating viewing experience. The league typically doesn't like to make such drastic corrections in the middle of a season, so this may be an issue it looks at in the off-season. But the viewing experience would go a long way if officials stop falling for the bait. Once the NBA stops rewarding players, eventually they will cease trying. 8 hope to quench their Stanley Cup playoff thirst. The end of the NHL regular season is 1 month away, and there is a lot to be decided. No team has clinched, and no team has been officially eliminated, though the Vancouver Canucks are getting close. The scoring race looks like it might come down to the wire, and the playoff field has a chance to look radically different from the last season. As of the morning of March 16, 8 teams that are sitting in a playoff position: the Buffalo Sabres, Pittsburgh Penguins, New York Islanders, Boston Bruins, Detroit Red Wings, Anaheim Ducks, Utah Mammoth, and San Jose Sharks had missed the postseason in 2024-25. Some of those teams are looking to end lengthy playoff droughts. Questions to be answered before the regular season ends April 16. Can the Sabres end their drought? It sits at 14 seasons, an NHL record, but the Sabres lead the Atlantic Division with 15 games left. The closest non-playoff team is 9 points back. It would take a major collapse for Buffalo to miss the playoffs again. But the Sabres show little sign of doing that, going to 36-2 since December 8th. A big reason for the turnaround was the firing of general manager Kevin Adams and the promotion of Jarmo Kekalainen on December 15th. The new general manager took steps at trade deadline to keep the run going. After defenseman Colton Parayko vetoed a trade, Kekalainen pivoted to defensemen Logan Stanley and Luke Schenn, plus forward Tanner Pearson. Schenn and Pearson have won Stanley Cup titles, important for a core making a rare step into the postseason play. Can the Red Wings end a drought? Their situation is precarious. They hold the second wild card spot in the Eastern Conference, but have played one more game than their closest pursuers. The Columbus Blue Jackets are surging since making coaching change to Rick Bowness and sit 1 point back. The Red Wings are 1-3-2 slide and are without forwards Dylan Larkin and Andrew Kopp. 8 of their final 15 games are against non-playoff teams, including the Columbus Blue Jackets on April 7th. Detroit, which last made the playoffs in 2016, added David Perron and Justin Falk at the deadline. Can the Ducks end their drought? Their drought is 7 seasons, but they're first in the Pacific Division. They have a good mix of youngsters and veterans, including trade deadline acquisition John Carlson and an experienced coach in Joel Quenneville. They'll be without suspended defenseman Radko Gudas for another 3 games after his knee-on-knee hit on Toronto Maple Leafs captain Austin Matthews. But forward Troy Terry has returned. Will we see another Panthers-Oilers Stanley Cup final? Doubtful. The 2-time defending champion Florida Panthers have been crushed by injuries, including captain Alexander Barkov tearing his ACL on the first day of training camp, and Matthew Tkachuk not playing until January after hernia surgery. With the team sitting 11 points out of a playoff spot, it has been resting other banged-up players. The Edmonton Oilers are in a good position for a 3rd consecutive run to the final. They sit in a playoff spot through Leon Draisaitl left the March 15th game with an injury. He was hit by Nashville Predators' Ozzy Weisblatt, came back for 1 shift and didn't feel well, so he missed the rest of the game. Who will win the Central? Early in the season, the answer was easy: the Colorado Avalanche. They had only 2 regulation losses on January 1st, and that figure is up to 12. Gabriel Landeskog and Arturi Leikkonen are out with injuries. Meanwhile, the Dallas Stars are on a franchise record 15-game point streak and are 3 points back. The team meets March 18th in Denver. Who will win the scoring title? There are 3 100-point scorers. Edmonton Connor McDavid, 114. Colorado's Nathan MacKinnon, 109. And Tampa Bay Lightning Nikita Kucherov, 106. Kucherov, who won the last 2 titles, is the hottest with 55 points since January 1st. McDavid has 44 and MacKinnon 39. But the gap might be hard for Kucherov to make up until McDavid's point totals are affected by the injury to Draisaitl. The best draft lottery odds? The Vancouver Canucks are last in the league with 48 points, and the 31st overall Calgary Flames have 59. But the 2025 draft lottery showed that might not have mattered as the Islanders moved up from 11th to 1st and selected Matthew Schaefer. Utah won the second drawing and moved up to 4th. Penn State's Gavin McKenna and Sweden's Ivar Stenberg are expected to be the top 2 picks. You're listening to reading of today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 40 minutes after the hour. This is the Life section. Reminders, hints at the growing Hoover verse. If it wasn't clear by now, Colleen Hoover doesn't care for morally black and white characters. Her latest book-to-screen adaptation, Reminders of Him, in theaters March 13, is a romantic drama about a woman starting anew. Kenna is fresh out of prison, having served 7 years for driving under the influence and causing the crash that killed her boyfriend. It wasn't until she was behind bars that she realized she was pregnant. Now back in small-time Wyoming, she seeks a relationship with the young daughter she has never met and forgiveness from the community raising her. I absolutely love playing devil's advocate, Hoover tells USA Today in an interview alongside the film stars Micah Monroe and Tyreek Withers. With every book that I write, I try not to have a clear villain. I want life to be the villain, and I want readers to step into the shoes of someone that they may not think they'll root for and see things from all different perspectives. We've got a woman who's made a mistake in her past and has spent time in prison, and you don't think, oh man, I want the world for her. But you do, she adds. Monroe, who plays a prognostic Kenya, says that complicated tug and pull is what drew her to the part. She felt a bond with Kenna while reading the script. Forgiveness can be really challenging as humans, and also maybe even harder is forgiving yourself, Monroe says. Withers and Monroe bring Hoover's love story to life. Withers and Monroe came from widely different film genres than Hoover's books. Monroe is a scream queen with leading roles in horror films including The Long Legs and It Follows, and Withers, who plays love interest Ledger, has appeared in I Know What You Did Last Summer and the Jordan Peele-produced Him. Why romance now? For one, Monroe says it's her favorite movie genre. Romances are scary too, Withers adds. Some of the best films are rooted in love. But it's not just any romance rule. The pair is entering the Hoover Cinematic Universe, the latest duo to bring her beloved romance characters to life. It Ends With Us starred Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni, who later became embroiled in a legal battle after on-set differences and allegations. Regretting You paired Allison Williams and Dave Franco, and McKenna Grace and Mason Thames. And her thriller, Verity, will star Hollywood darlings Anne Hathaway and Dakota Johnson, along with actor Josh Hartnett. For Hoover, Monroe was right for Kenna because she brought a kind of vulnerability that I wasn't expecting. Withers' character doesn't have as many red-hot emotional scenes, but the subtlety he brought to Ledger's empathy was spot on, she adds. Still, both actors feel pressure to do right by Hoover's source material. As an actor, you're a chronic people pleaser, and you just want to do the book justice, Withers says. It's super intimidating, Monroe says. I remember reading Harry Potter as a kid, and you visualize everything, so it's definitely intimidating. But I think what made me feel confident is that we had Colleen on set every day. She wrote the script. She was a producer. She was so involved. The key was her, and she was there every day. For the first time, Hoover was involved with casting and popped into set daily. She wrote the script and produced the film with Laura Levine, her co-founder and production company, Heartbones Entertainment. Reminders of Him is its first project. It's just such a different beast. When I write books, I'm on my own timeline. I'm alone in my office. I can just throw stuff away and no one ever has to read it, Hoover says. But when you're co-writing and then continuing to write and change things in pre-production and in production, it's definitely a collaborative effort. And even on filming days, these guys would be like, hey, can we change this line to sound more like something I would say? It's a more hands-on approach than she took to former adaptations such as It Ends With Us and Regretting You. While It Ends With Us was primed as a book talk Hollywood success story, the controversy and legal firestorm that left Hoover telling Elle magazine that she was embarrassed to say she wrote it. Even after the It Ends With Us controversy that ensued, Hoover says it hasn't changed her relationship with her adaptations. She's simply eager to experience more of the behind-the-scenes process on future projects. Those actors and the director did such a great job, and I couldn't have been happier with the movie, she said. That was a challenging book to adapt with the subject matter, and I think they handled it very sensitively, so I don't think I would have changed anything. Hoover appreciates that the film stayed true to the book, and she's eager to keep her movies similarly faithful going forward. I've just gotten really lucky because all 4 films have been filmed by different studios, different production companies. But I've had such a great experience being involved with Reminders of Him that I was able to be involved in Verity and be on set for a lot of that, Hoover adds. I really enjoy being more active. After Reminds of Him, Hoover fans can catch Verity hit theaters in October. Hoover didn't spill much, but she did tease the gorgeous set location. I feel like I didn't even come close to doing justice to the house like they did in the movie, Hoover says. Even the roofline is a bunch of V's, and on the inside you walk in, and somehow it looks like canoes. It was almost like the house was built for the movie, so it becomes its own character. In the meantime, Hoover, Monroe, and Withers will be holding on to reminders of this film's experience. Hoover reminisces about 4-wheeling trips, and Withers laughs when talking about leg wrestling with the author. It's kind of a shame that the audience doesn't get to feel those in-betweens, those days, those laughs, those moments of real quiet intimacy with each other hanging out, he says. Monroe says she'll be taking the friendship made with her. It doesn't always happen on movies that you walk away with a lifelong friend, Monroe says. I feel so beyond grateful for the bonds that we've created on this movie. It's something very unique, and it does not happen all the time. All hail Gosling and the stirring Mary. Who knew putting glasses on Ryan Gosling would give him an alien best friend could lead to something so spectacular, and the first great movie of 2026. Directed by Phil Lord and Chris Miller, Project Hail Mary, rated PG-13 in theaters March 20th, is an epic space adventure that checks all the sci-fi boxes, emphasis on sci, there and cast Gosling as a brainy everyman who is mankind's last shot to avoid extinction. Funny and dramatic when it needs to be, as well as exceptionally rousing throughout, the movie perfectly captures the story of human resilience and interstellar bromance that Andy Weir's 2021 brilliant novel did so well. Hail Mary also follows the original book's parallel narrative structure. Ryland Grace Gosling wakes up from an induced coma, looking like a cosmic caveman, and has no idea who he is or how he ended up on a spaceship in a whole other solar system. And via really helpful flashbacks, we learn how he got there. Grace boasts molecular biology degree, and because he ticked off some scholar years ago, he teaches middle school science. But he's recruited by a mysterious government operative, Ava Stratt, played by Sandra Hüller, for a monumental mission. Our sun is dimming because an unknown organism dubbed Astro Age is eating its radiation, and Grace is tasked to help figure out what the thing is and how to fix the problem before everybody dies out courtesy of an ice age. Ultimately, Grace ends up being quite the reluctant astronaut, and he's out of his depth until he's visited on the ship by a strange, huge craft that comes into orbit with him. Enter Rocky, voiced by James Ortez, a faceless spider-like rock creature who also is quite the extraterrestrial engineer. Grace and Rocky first communicate through movement, dancing, and fist bumps, and then Grace figures out a way to turn his sounds into words, learning that Rocky's son also is dying and he's trying to save his race of Airdians. They team up to help each other and form a close bond that comes into focus as their work gets hairier and more dangerous. Their friendship and interactions are amusing, nuanced, and even moving, and that's where Lord and Miller thrive as filmmakers. We're the guys behind the Lego Movie, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and the 21 Jump Street comedies. Sort of surprise is in the expansive blockbusterness of it. Hail Mary is hilarious at times, but also earnest, serious, and thought-provoking in its stakes, though never less than entertaining. And to think we almost had a Star Wars movie from these dudes. Half of the battle is writer Drew Goddard, sticking to Weir's script. The author has a gift for the space drama, and Hail Mary plays very much like other book adaptations. The Martian, which Goddard also did. The new movie embraces the weird science of Weir's writing, making it accessible rather than dumbing it down. And as in Martian, it's got the right spaceman. With his leading man looks, nerded down with spectacles, science t-shirts, and a planet Earth hacky sack, Gosling portrays Grace as a teacher way out of his element amid the hardcore NASA types. And in space, he's also out of place, losing his mind a bit before becoming besties with an adorable creature from another planet. Gosling harnesses an affability and vulnerability not unlike his Ken in Barbie that's even more key in Hail Mary, since we've got to root for this guy who has all the pressure of the galaxy on him as humanity's last hope. And we do, in spades. Going on a fantastic journey with him feels immersive and breezy. Even a hefty runtime of 156 minutes doesn't seem like enough to spend alongside Rocky, a wonder of filmmaking puppetry himself. Project Hail Mary is one of those old-school popcorn movies with big ideas, the kind of film that Steven Spielberg and George Lucas would have made back in the day, and kids of all ages would have obsessed over and bought the toys. There is a Lego set with Gosling and Rocky, just saying. Yet, considering the isolation we experienced during and after the pandemic, plus our own environment concerns, it feels engrossing, relatable, and of the moment as a movie about the importance of hope and working together. The Gates honors Vanderbeek's versatility. Spoiler alert. We're discussing all the twists and turns of The Gates in theaters now, including the ending, so turn away if you haven't seen the film and don't want to know what happens. James Vanderbeek's final movie role is about as far from Dawson Leary as it gets. The new thriller, The Gates, features the last film performance by the late Dawson's Creek actor, who died February 11th after a colorectal cancer battle. The star plays against type in the movie by taking on the role of the primary antagonist, a creepy, murderous pastor. The story centers on three friends, Derek, Mason Gooding, Kevin, Algie Smith, and Tyon, Keith Powers, who takes a shortcut on their way to a party and wind up locked inside a gated community where they witness a violent crime. While looking for someone to open the gate so they can leave, they walk up to a house and see a man, Jacob Vanderbeek, seemingly kill a woman, Elizabeth, played by Ellie Evans, during an argument by shoving her into a fireplace. The boys soon learn they found themselves inside a religious community that was built by Jacob, an influential and well-liked pastor. While trying to find their way out, they come across a resident named Christopher, played by Brad Leland, and explain what they witnessed. But as someone who thinks highly of Jacob as a good Christian man, Christopher immediately dismisses their claims and rats them out. Vanderbeek portrays Jacob not as an obvious psychopath, but as a manipulative, seemingly friendly man who can talk his way out of any situation and gaslight others into believing what he says. The people of the community want to think he can do no wrong because they're so invested in the idea that he is a flawless savior who has created a kind of Christian utopia. So it's appropriate that the film casts Vanderbeek, for whom viewers have similarly warm feelings and an inclination to trust because of his wholesome image. He was perfect for the role, an actor whose reputation as a charming, trustworthy guy would allow me to cast him against type to create a compelling commentary on why the people in this community would trust him despite his deep-seated flaws, director John Burr told The Daily Dead. The community all happens to be located in Texas, where Vanderbeek lived in the last years of his life. Throughout the film, Jacob takes the position that his twisted actions are justified because he is a man of faith on a righteous mission from God, and the movie ultimately is critical of those who use religion as a shield when perpetuating horrifying abuses. Kevin and Tyon eventually make their way out of the gates, but are chased down by a cop, Bobby, played by Kyril Kaufman, who essentially works for Jacob. He searches their car and finds Elizabeth's body, which Jacob put there to frame them. But Jacob's plan starts to unravel when it turns out Elizabeth is still alive. So Jacob shoots and kills Bobby and kills Christopher, who returns to save the day after having second thoughts about Jacob's innocence. In the ensuing chaos, the three boys escape and drive away, dropping Elizabeth off at the hospital and returning to Derek's home. But just when we think the film is wrapping up, surprise, Jacob is there at the house, waiting with a gun. Police arrive just in time, and Jacob's skills at talking his way out of trouble finally fall short. The officers aren't buying his story. When he pulls out a gun, they fatally shot him. The film ends with a poignant tribute to Vanderburg coming up on screen just before the credits, in loving memory of James. Burr said in an interview with Pop Culture Unplugged that no one working on The Gates was aware of Vanderbeek's illness while making the movie. The actor first disclosed his battle with cancer in November 2024 after receiving the diagnosis the year before. We sort of found out about it with the rest of the world, Burr told Pop Culture Unplugged. I did have a private conversation with him after that, just once, and it was encouraging. We all hoped, right? But after that, we didn't really talk about health anymore. We were texting throughout post-production. He was game, he was active, he was committed, he was excited. So it was shocking and obviously tragic. The Gates isn't Vanderbeek's first time going dark for a role. He memorably played a serial killer on Criminal Minds in 2007, for example. But the fact that he strayed so far from his Dawson image for his last movie speaks to his versatility and desire to challenge himself. While The Gates is the final film of Vanderbeek's career, fans still have one more performance from him to look forward to. The actor also appeared posthumously in the Legally Blonde prequel series Ellie, which premieres July 1st on Prime Video. You've been listening to a reading of USA Today for Wednesday, March 18th, 2026. We read the USA Today weekdays at noon. For more information, call us at 716-821-5555. Your reader for this hour has been Nancy.
Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have episode number 3 of Buckeye by Patrick Ryan. At 3 o'clock, we have Healthy Living, and at 4 o'clock, a re-airing of today's Buffalo News. Stay with us for these readings and more. following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability, which makes